Montana's governor has signed the nation's first statewide ban of TikTok on personal devices into law. It's due to take effect on the 1st of January. TikTok has come under scrutiny from authorities around the world over concerns that data could be passed to the Chinese government. This is Republican Governor Greg Gianforte, who passed the bill on Wednesday. He tweeted this statement: "To protect Montanans' personal and private data from the Chinese Communist Party, I have banned TikTok in Montana." In response, TikTok put out this statement saying Governor Gianforte has signed a bill that infringes on the First Amendment rights of the people of Montana by unlawfully banning TikTok. She added that people can keep using the app as we continue working to defend the rights of our users inside and outside of Montana. We're live now to New York to speak to Sapna Maheshwari. She's a New York Times business reporter who covers TikTok and emerging media. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Well, just take us through this, how this has come about and why Montana?
Sure. So this one-of-a-kind action really comes after a huge wave of bans on government devices, really from states all over the country, really more than a dozen. And Montana has escalated those efforts by saying in February that they were going to introduce a bill that would actually ban TikTok across the state. So not just for government employees, but for all people. It was debated quite roundly, but it made its way through different bodies of the state legislature. And it was a very big deal, of course, when it was signed into law yesterday.
And so there's a bit of time before this ban comes into force. And how easy will it be to enforce? Will it cover personal devices? I mean, how that can't be straightforward to actually put this into law.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions over how this would actually be enforced. It's easy to say, but there are questions around, will it affect visitors when they go to Montana? Will the app suddenly stop working? What if you live near the border of the state? What would happen in that case? And it seems that the bill has considered this by basically putting the onus on Apple and Google and targeting the app stores that carry TikTok, as well as TikTok itself, basically creating fines if it were to operate in the state.
Okay, it's a fascinating story. I would like to bring in our panel at this point, Rebecca and Ron. I mean, my children would be devastated if there was a ban here on TikTok. Is there a serious side to this, Rebecca? I mean, we talked about enforcing it is going to be difficult, but what do you think is sort of behind this decision?
So, I mean, obviously, this is a state action rather than covering the whole of the United States. But over the last few years, you've seen an increase in the use of industrial policy. In other words, restrictions on which companies can trade with which companies, which technologies can be used, and so on. And it's all part of great power conflict. So this is the actual weaponization, if you like, of industrial policy. This is how the economics of ordinary things, ordinary processes of globalization, including technology apps, there is a very real fear here on national security grounds that a lot of the Chinese-based apps might be taking data and that might be using in breach of national security protocols in the US and obviously being used by the Chinese government. So that's why it's happening. But the enforcement of this type of thing at a single state level is actually very difficult. So that's something that we have to think about, whether or not it's going to be possible in one single state.
And Ron, obviously Montana at the moment, can you see this spreading to other states?
I can, Sarah, but I have to say it's going to be very, very difficult to enforce. I mean, what if you live in the neighboring state of Idaho or Wyoming? Does that state ban have any impact on your application on your phone or on your personal device? And unfortunately, this is going to be a thorny issue as it relates to the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. We might not necessarily agree with the platform that TikTok has and its influence on younger folks around the globe, but they have at this juncture a freedom to operate freely through all 50 states here in the United States. And so this action by Montana, while I think a lot of conservatives will applaud this, from a legal perspective, from my background as a lawyer, I'm looking at this and thinking this is a lawsuit in waiting of infringing upon a First Amendment right to freedom of speech.
And do you think, Ron, that part of the reason that this has happened in the first place is, you mentioned they're young people, primarily an app used by young people. I would suggest people of an older generation, perhaps it's not top of their social media list, but that's perhaps why this has managed to get through in Montana?
I do. Look, I'm a dinosaur, right? I mean, at 53, I don't know what TikTok is. I don't know what TikTok am, but my nieces and nephews do. And, they're in their 20s and they seem to appreciate the platform. So I think for us dinosaurs, it might be a bit more difficult to ascertain why they're so attracted to the platform. But I think policymakers in Washington and around the globe particularly are going to have to look at this and address this for the security issues and concerns that are raised by this platform.
And finally, Sapna, from New York Times, I mean, what has been the reaction to this from your readers to this banning of TikTok in Montana?
Been an immediate outcry. I mean, of course, not unexpected for TikTok to come out against this, but you also have many free speech groups and the creators themselves. If you go on TikTok and search TikTok Montana ban, there's tons of people just posting how frustrated they are, how sad they are. But I will say many of them are also saying, hey, here's my Instagram and here's my YouTube account, follow me there.
Okay, well, from one dinosaur to not a dinosaur, thank you very much for joining us, Sapna. It's fascinating to hear from you.
Thanks.